This is the kind of day I've had. Scoop City is brought to you by Thursday Night Football on Prime Video. Hi, everybody. I'm the Athletic Senior NFL Insider, Dianna Rossini.
And I'm Chase Daniel. I played 14 years in the NFL.
It's such an interesting time of year now, even just in the season, because this is when teams are starting to have discussions about what are we doing next in terms of the ones that are not going to make the playoffs. The bad teams. Those chats are happening, let me tell you. They are trying to figure out, we sticking with this quarterback? Are we changing our head coach? Are we changing our general manager? And I definitely want to talk to you about all of that. So we'll get to that in a little, but we've got the Buffalo Bills hosting the Kansas City Chiefs. Ooh. And this is gonna be a big one. And there's so many reasons for this that I know that I'm interested in, I'm sure you're interested in, besides the Patrick Mahomes, the Josh Allen, the playoff implications. This has just really turned into one of the best matchups that we've seen over the last few seasons between these two teams, and of course because of these quarterbacks and even the coaching matchup now. Sean McDermott's done such a phenomenal job this year. So we have our Bills reporter joining the show to give us a little taste of what it's been like in Buffalo this week, but also what he has seen specifically in Josh Allen and why he's playing such a high level of football. So we're going to dive all into that. I can't wait for you to hear that because I was blown away by some of the details that Joe shared about what Josh is doing well. So We'll get to that. And then finally, I'm sure you noticed this, Chase, with our text messaging and FaceTime. I went dark for probably 14 to 15 hours the other day, and I never explained to you why. So,
I haven't heard from you in like 2 weeks, so that makes sense.
Well, I actually have a reason, and
I'm sure.
I want to share this story with everybody, not to share in my anxiety and fears and drama, but I want to share my lesson learned. So we're going to wrap up the show with our lessons learned. I'm going to give one life lesson that I've learned recently, and I want you to give a life lesson that you've learned recently, because we are here to help the Scoopers on Scoop City. So we'll do that at the end of the show, but let's get right to it. Here is what I'm hearing around the league. So, Chase, you heard me touch on it a few minutes ago about how this is the time of year where everyone's trying to plan. What is next? What are we going to do? So we're at that halfway mark, a little past it now. And the head coach, GM, hiring cycle chatter is going.
Are you serious?
Here we go. Oh, yeah.
Already?
Oh, yeah. We are
just
going.
Started in November, guys. What are we doing?
I know. And as somebody that has to do this for a living in terms of the information gathering and and having conversations with different teams about their plans, I am doing this way earlier than I usually do.
Why?
Well,
why do you think it's starting earlier?
I think that we already know two spots that are open in terms of head coach, right? We got the Jets and the Saints. But I think it's twofold. I think having two top candidates like Bill Belichick and Mike Vrabel, we'll call it on the street, on the beach here, ready to jump in, makes a lot of these moves very alluring in terms of change, right? Because it's not like they don't know what the options are. At least, you know, even if you don't want to hire a Bill or Mike, you at least know that there's two really good coaches available if you don't like what you have in-house. So that's kind of my read on it. And I went back to my notes to see where we were at this time last year. And I actually wasn't even really talking with this much emphasis on the changes at head coach. It was right around Thanksgiving, the week after, that we really got that cycle going.
Ramped it up, yeah.
And we were predicting about 8 openings, right around that.
A quarter of the league.
7 new head coaches were hired. Right? So, obviously some of those situations are the ones that got fired. We can call it retirement, but they were fired, right? We're talking about Seattle. We're talking about New England. Everyone puts it nice. So here we are now. It's mid-November, and I feel like we need to just discuss the fact that I think we're going to be talking about 9, 10 openings.
Stop it.
And it's only November. It only gets worse.
I can only find 8.
Well, that's what's fun about this exercise. Okay, so look at it this way. There's a bunch of the obvious ones that we've been talking about since pretty much last year. But then there's always an outlier team. Always. No matter what you say, no matter what you think, there's always that team that you're like, oh my God. Then maybe you have possible people stepping away, right? You have to consider those. Is that on the table for any coaches that don't want to do it anymore, right? You have a lot of these little scenarios that you have to think about. So I think this is going to be a really big season in terms of the coaching cycle and the availability and owners going, all right, we're going to shift gears here. We went young last year, right? Dave Canales, he's 43. Brian Callahan, 40. Mike McDonald, 37. Gerard Mayo, 39. We're still figuring out all four of them, right? They're new head coaches. They're young. I think all four are safe, right? I think we can all say that.
Yeah.
They're going to be returning next year.
One season, yeah.
But we see this all the time where the pendulum swings the other way, where I do know from talking to people in the league, there's now the trend of culture builders again. Last year was the hot play callers, the guys that can get the most out of the young quarterbacks, right? And now we've swung back to the culture builders, the Dan Campbells, the Raheem Morrises, the Mike Tomlin types. That is what's going to be a need and a desire in this coaching cycle.
But there's only two culture builders that I would say that now I have 9 teams. Now that you said all that.
It's a fun exercise, right?
There's only 2 culture builders that make sense for me, though. So what are the other 7 going to do if there's 9? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you can take a look at some of the coaches that have good reputations around the league as play callers that have potential, right? The names that you hear a lot, obviously Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn out of Detroit. If you recall last year, Chase, Ben Johnson had so many opportunities. He decided he wanted to stick in Detroit. And I believe he's really waiting for the right opportunity. I do believe he wants to be a head coach this year, though. I'm not sure he was all in last year. He definitely wants to do it, though. So you got Ben Johnson, you got Aaron Glenn. Joe Brady has done a really nice job in Buffalo with Josh Allen.
Come on.
Bobby
I love the
Slowick.
guy. I was with Joe Brady. Yeah, Bobby Slowick for me. Like, that makes a lot of sense.
Right? That's a name that I think has a lot of buzz around it because of what he's done in Houston. Cliff Kingsbury is back in the mix as a name because...
Dianna, stop it.
Why?
Cliff is back in the... Did we forget? Like, look. I like me some Cliff Kingsbury as an offensive play caller. Did we forget what he did as a head coach in Arizona?
Now, here's what I do appreciate. I think if Cliff had an opportunity to be a head coach, I think he's taking interviews. I think he would do it. But I liked when he joined Scoop City and he talked about how much he's enjoying just being the play caller.
It's been good. You know, I was never an OC in the NFL, so I jumped straight from college head coach to NFL head coach. So to be able to do this and really focus on our players and on that side of the ball and pour everything into the offense is a new experience, and I'm really enjoying it.
I liked that, and I think this fits him. Because I think that's something that you have to keep in mind in this process, and I had this conversation with a GM the other day. Some coaches are just better at being a coordinator, and that's okay.
100%.
Right? Not every coordinator has to go be a head coach. They want to.
Steve Spagnuolo, number 1.
Steve is a great example. Spags has done a tremendous job in Kansas City. It works, it fits, and look how much success he's had there. How much support he gets from that front office. How many times they've revamped that defense to get him guys, give
also,
him
I
players.
feel like he's getting paid like a lower end head coach too.
True. Certainly doesn't hurt. Brian Flores, right? The Minnesota Vikings lead the league in takeaways right now. They've done a really good job. That's going to be a name that we're going to hear. So Arthur Smith, I know he was a head coach already. He didn't have the most success in Atlanta, but they were building towards something. They were getting close. They just needed a quarterback, and now he's done something in Pittsburgh.
That's where I got to draw the line. Like, I like Arthur Smith as a coordinator. He had his chance at a head coach. Aren't there I'm not here to poo-poo on people, but like you you had your chance. It didn't. I agree. There were some good years. There were some bad. He didn't get everything that he needed. He never had a quarterback. I get that. But why all of a sudden would you get a chance right away again?
Because
are we that in need of head coaches like that? Like, aren't there other qualified candidates?
I think when a coach has a lot of the fundamentals of the role, of the job, on how to do it, that's really valuable. All right. So I'm talking to teams that I know for a fact they are resistant to a first-time head coach. They don't want to deal with the learning curve. They don't want to deal with the warm-up, the first year, sort of figuring it all out. Every coach I've ever spoken to over the years, they always reflect on their first year and they always say the same thing. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, right? Like, it's that after that second year, I feel like is when coaches really figure out, all right, this is how you can be a head coach. But some owners don't want to wait for that, right? Everyone's looking for Sean McVay. Sean McVay has been the best and worst thing to ever happen in football because everybody wants a Sean McVay as their head coach. And there is no other Sean McVay on this planet. And
look at this tree of head coaches already. He's like
there are
40.
Types. I know. I love that Sean McVay is a tree.
It's crazy.
He's like 6.
Yeah.
But I think that is the hope for a lot of these owners. If I can untap that, right? I can give the guy a chance. Because remember, Sean was with Washington and Dan Snyder certainly didn't think that he could be a head coach. There were a lot. I remember going on TV and criticizing it. I remember I was like, Sean McVay is not ready. And obviously he has proved to be a top 3 head coach in football at this point. So
look, I see it as like, for me, there's 5 candidates that stand above the rest. And, maybe you can answer, but I'm going to go ahead and say Bill Belichick's probably going to get a chance to go back into coaching. So you got to put him up there. But I wouldn't call him a culture builder. In fact, I would call him the opposite, just based on what he is. So I don't know if an owner wants to give that much power to a 70-year-old coach or however old he is. Ben Johnson, Bobby Slowick, Mike Vrabel, which I think is actually like low-key one of the better names in the hiring cycle. Bill Belichick, and you know what? That's it. That's really 4 for me.
I thought this was interesting. I think you'll appreciate this. I got this text from a decision maker who's going to be making a hire. He said, you got to just look around the league right now at the physical brand of football. Look at the Chargers, the Chiefs, the Packers, the Lions, the Eagles. Running the football wins. The Chargers, right? They've got this commitment to a tough brand of football, and it shows how they physically beat up on softer teams. That is the way to win right now in 2024 NFL space. So when you go through the list of available candidates, it's like, that is a Belichick, right? That is a Vrabel. That is an Aaron Glenn.
Oh, dude, yeah, I forgot Aaron Glenn. Oh, my gosh. I love Aaron Glenn. I think he'd be a culture builder, and the fact that also, like, former player plus culture builder plus tough. Like, he's one of the I forgot. I know I was forgetting one. He's definitely one that I would love to see get a job. But let's go back to, and I'm sure you're not going to say anything, but like I saw 9 teams that are going to have head coaches. You think there could be 10? That has to be the most in a while, right?
Yeah. Look, a lot of stuff can change between now and the end of the season. And, you have some scenarios where people appear to be safe. And we've seen it every year where their teams fall apart and owners just react. Sometimes an emotional decision, sometimes look, let's just rip this Band-Aid now. Because are you telling me the Bears and the Jets don't regret making that move last year instead of waiting till now? They knew.
Oh, yeah.
We all knew we were going to be here where we're at, which is, of course that wasn't going to work with Robert Saleh. Of course that wasn't going to work with Eberflus. We knew it last year, and they decided to stay patient. And credit to them for believing in whatever it is that they thought those head coaches were building. But the proof is in the pudding now. They weren't.
Well, I'm sure you won't give your teams, but I'm going to give mine because I could care less.
I love when you give your teams. Go.
Jets, obviously. I think the Colts, I think with the way they've handled Anthony Richardson, I think that could be a surprise team because even though I love Ballard, I think that could be one of those things where I hope he doesn't get fired, but I could see him as a surprise team. Thoughts?
I think if you're talking head coach, I don't think Shane Steichen's in trouble. But if he is in trouble and he turns out to be a surprise firing, he will have a job very quickly.
Yeah. Jags, even though he's my guy, I think the Raiders could make a switch again. Giants, I think, could make a switch.
Why?
Bears.
They had the vote of confidence.
Yeah, that's why we know how we feel about that. Bears, even though Abers, I feel like all my guys are getting fired around the league. I feel like this is like a big deal for me because I won't have any more people to go
Friends.
like, hey, what's going on?
You're losing your sources.
Yeah, I know. Obviously, Saints and Cowboys, and the one team for me. And people can call me a hater or not, but I feel like if the Eagles don't fulfill a goal of a championship or a deep run in the playoffs, I think he could be fired.
Jeffrey Lurie and Howie Roseman have been very clear and open and comfortable sharing that they believe that they have a championship roster. Okay? So they did their job. Head coach Nick Sirianni, you have to go do your job. So the way you're kind of saying Super Bowl or bust, to me, that's in line with how they're going to approach this. On top of the fact that we've seen some emotional, temperamental behavior from their head coach that has been in question. Which brings me to the Deion Sanders conversation, Chase. I've been seeing a lot of chatter about Deion leaving college football and possibly entering the NFL ring as a head coach. And this stuff gets floated out and around because, A, it's interesting and entertaining as heck. Obviously, the idea of Deion Sanders going and working for, the Dallas Cowboys and Jerry Jones.
That's the only place I would let him go.
It is so incredible to think about if that were to happen. But after having conversations with people around the league this past week about, is this real? Like, are we really doing this? At this point right now, this is all just chit-chat.
Why?
Because he wants to stay in college.
He wants to stay in college? He wants to stay in the NIL, and he wants to deal with, like, what? Why? So if he wanted to go to the NFL, they would be okay with it?
Here's how I look at it. I don't think he realizes if there is an owner that really wants to bring him on, they are going to write a nice big fat check, especially some of these newer owners, if they really believe that he can be the right guy. I just think a lot of this is just for excitement and good conversation on television and on YouTube for people to just debate whether or not Deion Sanders would be a good choice. He was asked about whether or not he would get involved with his son's draft situation. And he's like, no, I'll privately reach out to teams if I didn't want him to play somewhere. And when you take a look at the teams at the top of the draft now, I'm expecting him to make a lot of calls. Where do you
want Shedeur to go? Like, that's what I'm saying. But I'm going to be honest with you. I don't think Shedeur goes that high though. Like that's the thing. So if we go through this whole process and Shedeur is like, hey, the top quarterback, I don't know if a top quarterback is worthy of a top 5 pick this year based on just the class in general. So that's something you have to keep in mind too.
I know. And I'm glad that we're actually even talking about this quarterback class coming up because we've talked about it with Dane Brugler, our draft expert and analyst about this. And I think this is going to play into so many of the conversations happening that we discussed at the top of the show about the future direction, the plans for these teams, knowing that this is a really light quarterback class. We know that there are teams that are going to be in the market for a quarterback. I just don't know if the draft is going to be the answer for a lot of these guys. AKA
could you imagine though?
Going to probably have another job.
Like Jerry Jones, go ahead and hire you some Deion Sanders and Prime. Let Prime take, if they finish what they're doing now, the 10th or 11th pick your son. Could you imagine Shedeur and Prime? In Dallas, the NFL as a whole would explode. The talk show world would explode. The TV world would explode. And everyone would talk about the Dallas Cowboys even more. And it would be awesome.
from a business sense, it's
They might be good.
Rock star.
You never know. What if they were actually good?
Well, the head coach of the Dallas Cowboys right now is Mike McCarthy. We all assume that he will be finished after this season, but does that mean Mike McCarthy's career is over?
Down. What are you doing?
Well, I don't think his career is over. I think that there will be perhaps some interested parties.
Stop.
I've seen some
really.
I've seen some chatter about could Mike McCarthy go to New York? Would Aaron Rodgers want to go back with his former head coach at Green Bay and
you're blowing my mind right now.
Okay. Just for this exercise, put yourself in Aaron's shoes, all right? You just experienced a disastrous 2 years. Forget the injury. Just from the firings to the ownership decisions to just the dysfunction that is the New York Jets. You're not really used to that, right? You just were in Green Bay where you're beloved, you're a hero, you're worshipped, and you had success. It wasn't perfect, but you had success. How quick are you to run back to what you know? This is already a quarterback who likes familiarity. Look at who he's brought to New York. Who is he most familiar with? Mike McCarthy.
They're going to let Aaron Rodgers quarterback the New York Football Jets for another year?
Yeah.
He has not played well. Oh, my God.
Could you imagine the New York Jets going, we're going to cut Aaron Rodgers?
Yeah, absolutely I could. Move on with your life. You're going to have him for one more good year for what? For another 5-12 season? For a 6-11 season? Like, that's, to me, that is the, don't get me started on this. That's the dysfunction of the New York Jets.
Planning on having Aaron Rodgers return next year. They're not
it's a death wish for a new coach.
Well, let's talk about that. We can't change the Aaron Rodgers situation. They want him there. He's there. He wants to be there, let's say.
All right.
What type of coach does Aaron Rodgers need? Who do you want to see in there that can bring out the best in him? And if you're the Jets front office and your ownership,
well, I know.
Forget Aaron Rodgers, just all of it.
Well, there's one guy. It has to be Mike Vrabel. It has to be. That's the only guy that'll put up with his shit. That's the only guy that'll put up with his shit and put him right back in his place. Aaron Rodgers has way too much power right now. Way too much power. You need to take it back from the player and put it back on the head coach and be a leader in front of men. That is not what Robert Saleh was doing because Aaron Rodgers took over the team. That's why he got fired. Let's be real. Are we forgetting why Robert Saleh got fired? He got an axe way too soon. Aaron Rodgers.
The New York Jets are going to need a plan to get coaches like a Mike Vrabel who are going to have options to want to come to New York. That is the biggest issue this team is going to have. And I know some people are listening and going, there's only 32 head coaching jobs. Anyone will take it. The New York Jets are not going to want a first-time head coach running this team with Aaron Rodgers. They're going to want a veteran. They're going to want someone with experience. They're going to want someone who knows how to do the job because we talked about the need for culture. They're the poster for we need to know what we are, and it needs to be built the right way from the bottom up. So who's going to be able to do that? And are the Jets going to be able to convince that guy, in the example you used, a Mike Vrabel, to come to New York when there are better owners and better teams out there? That's going to be a really hard sell. And maybe they pull it off. And maybe Aaron Rodgers becomes the big recruiter, the one that's like, here's what we're doing.
For what, Dianna? For one more year? Aaron Rodgers is going to play one more year. Like, you're setting your franchise back if you're just thinking he's going to play 5 more years and you're not going to go out there and you're not going to hire the absolute best coach for the franchise moving forward. It's the cycle that the New York Jets are stuck in, and I'm sick of it. And quite frankly, I'm sure Jets fans are sick of it.
I think that the Jets have a really big challenge ahead of them. Woody Johnson is expected to head back to the UK because Donald Trump won the election, right? So the organization is going to be operating as if Woody's no longer in charge, but his brother Christopher Johnson is in charge. There are some advantages to that. That is, in my opinion, I think that helps the Jets' cause because the word is out, because there are former coaches and former GMs and former people that are on that staff that have shared with the league, this is what it's like to work with Woody Johnson. I mean, Rex Ryan's on TV every week. Bill Belichick's on Monday Night Football saying it, that Woody is a miserable owner to work for. Okay. All right. So let's say that's the truth. Woody's not going anywhere. He's not selling the team. But he actually literally is going somewhere. He is going across the pond. So now you're going to have Christopher Johnson, his brother, running the show. So what is that going to entail? What is that going to look like? And does this now become more appealing? I think that's where they should start. I think that's the lead of their, we'll call it the Jets resume to Mike Vrabel's agent, right? To Ben Johnson's agent. Although this would be Ben Johnson as a first-time head coach, but I just think he's such a damn good play caller that it may be worth the risk. Look, we have weeks to go here, and this thing is just going to heat up as the conversations are starting. GMs are calling each other. GMs are calling coaches agents. This thing
That's crazy.
It's brewing, baby.
Already,
it's brewing. So we're going to dive into it more as the season goes. So we still have so much more to get to on this show. All right, we got to talk about this Chiefs-Bills matchup. So we've got our Bills beat reporter coming up next so we can dive into figure out what the heck is going to happen on Sunday. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Scoop City. We are now joined by the Athletics Buffalo Bills beat reporter, Joe Buscaglia, who has covered this team for 15 seasons. He's 38 years old, so I feel like we need to preface it that way. 38, so almost half your life you've been covering the Bills at this point. So here we are now. We're getting ready for a really big matchup against the Kansas City Chiefs. Can you just tell me what the feel of the Buffalo Bills are this season?
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with how small the expectations were for the team heading in, both locally and nationally, quite honestly. Like, a lot of people expected this to just be a down year not really a down year, but maybe like a retooling year, because they fixed up a lot of their cap and all those issues. They try to get younger in some spots and develop in some areas, but the things that people did not expect to happen were the Jets to just go absolutely crazy off the rails. I guess they should have expected that. But also for Tua Tagovailoa to get hurt the way that he did against the Bills, that kind of tanked their season. So the division is an afterthought now, and now the vibes are in Buffalo are just high because no one really expected them to be this good this quickly. But yeah, comparing it to the last few years, it seems just a little bit more fresh in the locker room, in the building, and certainly a little bit different from what we have seen the last couple of years.
Well, I'm certainly guilty of being one of those people who was definitely underestimating this team.
Same.
And I was just doing it based on roster, things I knew, and I got a feeling too from just talking to people that this was going to. I love the word retool. That's what it felt like. It didn't feel like a completely rebuild. It felt like a retool. Plus, people hate saying just a rebuild. It feels so negative. And now here they are in a position where, with their record that they have right now, with Josh Allen under center, anytime the Bills are at this point, they're going to the AFC Championship game. That's how that works statistically for them. So I do think there's something to be said for the Bills not having as much pressure and as much of a target on their back like they have every year. I mean, the expectations have been through the roof every year. And now this was the one year where they got some relief. But with that said, all right, so I came across your article, which was really, really well done, where you were talking about the gap between Josh Allen's season, like the way it looks on the stat sheet, compared to the way he's actually playing. So what do you think you discovered most by kind of looking at Josh Allen through that lens?
Yeah, just to preface, a lot of my coverage is built around film study, and so I go back and I study the film after every single game. So, and I've been doing this for a decade now, and so I have literally studied every single snap of Josh Allen's career. And what I can tell you is his ability to process in real time now is light years beyond where it was when he began. And it's even well past where he was even a season ago before Ken Dorsey was let go. The way that he approaches any sort of defense, like early in his career, it would be, okay, the blitz is going to get him. And I remember the Ravens game where they sent a bunch of cover zeros at him and he just absolutely crumbled from that point forward. And he fixed it. And then moving forward. It was zone that kind of gave him a little bit more trouble, and then he started to find ways to do that and attack teams down the field. Teams tried man-to-man with him, and then the Dolphins learned the hard way that that man-to-man does not work against Josh Allen. And then last year, it seemed like teams started to figure out a way to attack him, because Josh Allen, for the most part in his career, has been mostly impatient with trying to take shots down the field and make stuff happen. And so that's why, with the proliferation of the cover two shell phenomenon throughout the NFL, that was a major approach used against him, and he was not doing well against it early on last year. But he fixed that later stages of last year, definitely early on in this year. And now it's to the point where anytime you see him processing, he's like, okay, if you're going to sit at that level on the defense, I'm just going to take underneath, and I'm going to frustrate you up until the point where you start to creep up, and that's when I'm going to hit you over the top. So these are the type of shots that I'm talking about, where he is taking these checkdowns and all this stuff, but also prying open the defense for a later opportunity. Like there was a honey hole shot to Mac Hollins on the sideline on a 2nd and 16 that got a first down right away. And later on in the game, being able to make people miss in the backfield, and although staying patient and keeping his eyes down the field. Most times he would have tucked it and ran. This time at the end of the half, he just casually launched it down to Mac Hollins with finesse and everything along those lines, and he brings it in for a 44-yard catch, sets him up for a field goal at the end of the half. So it's just that type of stuff where he's not making mistakes by trying to force the issue, and that was his biggest detriment of what he was as a player to this point. So if that's gone, I mean, you're talking about processing, arm strength, velocity of the throws, accuracy, mobility. Like what? And if he's able to attack every single defense, then what do you do to defend this guy is the big issue. And the biggest thing that teams have tried to do is use his receivers against him. And now he's starting to graduate from that.
Where is he learning this growth from, though, right? Let's give him the credit. He's probably doing the studying and the discipline of this growth process. But who do you think he's leaning on the most in helping him develop and take this next, which sounds like a pretty significant step in his career? Yeah,
he's definitely a big self-study guy. I remember talking with him in 2019. There was this one game against the Patriots where they just absolutely frustrated him, confused him. It was like a multi-pick game, maybe 3 or 4 picks. And he looked at that game as the time to look in the mirror. And that was the year in 2019 where he really took his first step forward. And so from there, it's just he's very hard on himself. And he goes and tries to work with every single person he can within the locker room, in the coaching staff. Him and Joe Brady have a great rapport. Brian Daboll deserves a ton of credit for what Josh Allen has become to this point in his career. And certainly Brady has helped unlock him a little bit more to get him out of the doldrums against the cover two shell and really hammer it home. And even Sean McDermott too. I mean, to a certain degree, where McDermott throughout his entire career has been, hey, don't be afraid to take the small stuff. Don't be afraid to throw the ball away if it's not there. Don't be afraid to slide to avoid a big hit. These are all issues that he had earlier in his career, and they're just not there anymore. So a lot of people deserve a lot of credit, but I think Josh deserves most of all.
Well, there's a big test this weekend against Kansas City, and there's obviously a million reasons why we want to pay attention to this outside of just the competition between these two teams that have gone up against each other, and every game appears to have been just an exciting one. But you've got the Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes situation, but then also you've got the bigger picture situation of if they can knock off Kansas City, they can maybe get a first a 1 seed and bring it home to Buffalo for the playoffs. So there was actually a lot more at stake than just the basic surface stuff here. What do you think you're going to learn about this team, though, as they go up against a really good Steve Spagnuolo defense on Sunday?
Well, my favorite piece of this whole puzzle is that they have never beat Patrick Mahomes in Buffalo. which is certainly something. And that includes the playoff loss last year. So they had their shot at the Chiefs in Buffalo last year in the playoffs, and they lost. Point blank period. And so that is something that I'm sure will be sticking in the back of their minds. So, very basically rudimentary. It's, can they beat Patrick Mahomes in their home barn? They're great against Mahomes in the regular season at Arrowhead for whatever reason, but for some reason they just haven't been able to do it in Buffalo. So that's number one, quite obviously, because if they can conquer that villain, then I think you can start to look at them and say, okay, this might be a legitimate Super Bowl contender here. But until they start to prove that they can beat the Chiefs consistently everywhere and at any time of the season, then that will ring hollow. But in terms of schematic standpoint and what we learn about the team, will Allen continue on with this, what he has done to get himself to playing the best football of his career in a big spot in a game like this one? Because we're not that far removed from the Texans game where they didn't have Khalil Shakir and they didn't have anyone at receiver. And Josh Allen went 9 of 30 in that game because he was trying to force the issue a little bit too much, and the Texans were trying to blitz him. So can he conquer Steve Spagnuolo, who's really done a nice job against him, but Allen still has put up good stats.
Sean McDermott, if something's going to keep him up the night before about his defense facing the Kansas City Chiefs offense, what do you think is going to be stressing him out headed into this game about the defense specifically? Is there an area?
Yeah, I think the run defense is my guess. And then if the Chiefs start to have some success with their run defense, because as good as the Bills have played, above their level of who they have on their roster right now, the defensive tackle spot is a little bit worrisome because once you take Daquan Jones and Ed Oliver off the field because they rotate their guys, then you have Austin Johnson or Jordan Phillips or Quentin Jefferson or Eli Nku, and it hasn't been a good situation for run defense. They've struggled to get off blocks at times. That was a big emphasis last week. What their defensive coordinator, Bobby Babbage, called my new favorite term, block destruction techniques. They need to be able to do that. And if they're unable and need their safeties to kind of creep down a little bit, and their safeties are their biggest concern of their defense by far, then does this create a window for Xavier Worthy to finally get one deep against the Bills? And the other part of this too, and they have allowed a pretty hefty amount of explosive plays this year. And that's not something that the Chiefs have necessarily done so far this season. They've been mostly like hemmed in. So I do want to see what kind of wins at that capacity. Is it the Chiefs with getting their explosive plays or the Bills preventing those explosive plays?
Correct. And obviously the addition of DeAndre Hopkins makes this a much bigger challenge because even though we've already seen like some explosion from DeAndre and how he's already helped, even just the production with Travis Kelce, with him being another option there. I think this is a kind of game where we can see not unfiltered, untapped, but this is where we can see DeAndre Hopkins. They really lean into that explosiveness if they know that the Bills are struggling. So we had Josh Allen on Scoop City in the summer. He's easily one of the most fun quarterbacks because usually when quarterbacks are fun, they're usually not that good. But you have like one of the best quarterbacks in football, and he's also awesome to talk to and hang out with, and he doesn't take himself too seriously. And we were talking about his wide receiver group, and he was just talking about Keon Coleman and just how like funny he is. Just every day he's just doing something that makes him laugh, and there's obviously like a youthfulness there. But Mac Hollins is another one that has emerged as just like a goofball. I follow him on TikTok. He does these science experiments. What have you seen from Hollins in terms of his personality that's like, wait, this guy's funny?
Well, there was a big right when they signed him, his press conference was mostly about his theories. The barefoot thing, he walks barefoot everywhere. He started doing that a number of years ago when he had an injury, and then he spoke with someone that said, hey, walking barefoot is actually very good to help strengthen the muscles that you are injuring at a pretty consistent rate. He also does not eat soup, I believe, is one. There's something about cats too. I can't remember. there's just a lot of things. He doesn't take an elevators because he would rather take the stairs. Doesn't want to. I think the term was, my body is not going to lift myself up however many stories, so I would like to do it myself. Yeah, I think there's something about not liking cats or something along those lines. So he's got his things, he's got his theories, and I guess it's sometimes comedic relief, but also it's kind of a cult of personality thing because there's a lot of guys walking around barefoot these days in Orchard Park.
Wow. Yeah. Look, I think that's a different type of Bills team than we've seen in years past in terms of that type of personality. Like even with Diggs there, Diggs has got tons of life to him and energy, and he's just a magnetic human being, but he was never really goofy or funny, right? So to just have this all...
It depended on the day, honestly. I will say from covering him. It depended on the day.
I know that's a question I do get a lot from talking to people around the league as well, is like, how is Buffalo different now that Diggs isn't there in terms of what their personality is? Mm-hmm. Have you sensed any change in Buffalo since? And this isn't like a shot at Stefan. This is just, do you sometimes, breakups are good for everybody. And he was, before his injury, he was so happy to be in Houston too for his own personal reasons as well, and professional ones. Do you sense anything different with this team?
Yes and no. I mean, Stefan is a big personality, and there's no doubt. I mean, he is extremely hardworking. He is, he expects the most out of himself. He expects the most out of everybody in the building because he quite honestly, he just wants to win really, really badly. Yeah. But he's also got, like I alluded to, he also has a goofy side. And, there was a lot of people, and you said it yourself, there was a lot of people in the locker room that just gravitated toward him. And I still think he's got a lot of really good friends inside the building. So it is different because you don't have that type of person in the wide receiver room anymore because they replaced Diggs with Keon Coleman, who's kind of a goof, Matt Collins, who has his theories, but still he's a little bit magnetic in the same way that Stefan Diggs is. And Khalil Shakir drives a Subaru, so that's all you need to know about Khalil Shakir.
I just love all the different personalities on this team. Yep. Speaking of personality, before I let you go, obviously everyone associates this Bills team, and God knows Kansas City's going to be ready for it. Just the fandom, the Bills Mafia. Because you've been covering the team for 15 years, I could see a world where you just kind of get accustomed and used to, almost even immune to the craziness and the passion of these fans. Have you seen anything this season or in the last few months that even shocked you? Like, man, these people really love their Buffalo Bills. Any funny signs? Any over-the-top stuff that you've observed? I know your vantage point from the press box, you can't really see everything from I know even when I've been in there, you can see just like the people in front of you, but any takeaways lately? It's
been a bit more muted recently, but I'm sure, when they were really good. And
what's going on?
No, I'm saying in terms of like, it used to be every single week someone is jumping through a flaming table. And I haven't seen as much of that. That does not mean it's still not happening, but it's also becoming more commonplace now to where, okay, maybe the novelty of it is wearing off a little bit. But there was also a big thing last year where when they were building the stadium and there was a giant, they called it the pit, the hole where the stadium is now being built. There was an emphasis of people just to go to the pit for a while, and it created some weird stuff. But yes, they have not lost their crazy. They have not lost their fastball. I get there wicked early to avoid a lot of it, but yes, you go around the parking lots and you are bound to see things that you would really only see on college campuses is the best way I would put it.
I don't know, Joe. Here's what I heard from that. Your move, Bills Mafia. Your move.
I'm not challenging them. I think they do a tremendous job. I think they are very well versed. They are very
misunderstood. They are.
Oh yeah, sure.
I used to get sent up there, and ESPN would send me like security, and I'd be like, I don't need security. They're the nicest people. They're just loud, crazy, and always attempting to get me hammered. Despite the fact that I was working on live television. So
that's a fair point. Yes.
The effort was always made, and that's why they're great people. So, Joe, you are also a great person. Thank you so much for hanging out with us here on Scoop City, and I'm sure we will have you on again come the playoffs.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
All right, Chase, I've been looking forward to talking to you about this all week long. We have a new segment called Lessons Learned, because sometimes you get to the end of the week and you know that you learned something the hard way, and I am the example of learning things the hard way. So I would like to just start with what my lesson is. My lesson is, if you are an iPhone user, and if you're like me, and I'm sure like Chase and everyone else, you probably use your phone for everything, including photos, videos, and of course contacts, which as a journalist, that is my prized possession. So I need my contact list to do my job. Make sure you write on a piece of paper your username and password. Put it on a piece of paper, put it in a safe, put it in your glove compartment, put it in your underwear drawer, put it under your sink, put it somewhere. You know what you shouldn't do? You shouldn't put it in the document section, the notes section, in your actual phone. Like, don't put your password in the phone, because what happens if something happens to your phone? So we talked earlier about how a couple weeks ago the boys took my phone and they put it in the microwave and they cooked my phone. So the last few weeks, the guts of this iPhone have been hanging out, but it's working. And Chase, I know you've been on me about going to the Apple store, or at least just ordering one. And I was going to do it on Sunday because I'm like, all right, this thing is, we're getting to a point now. Like, this is getting bad.
Yeah.
I'm living on the edge, right? Like,
it's bad.
I need to get a phone. But my husband had to travel for work, and I just couldn't. No one in my family could help me with the kids, so I was like, I can't go to the store with them because that's a headache. So I'm like, I'll just get to another day. All right. Well, I got Mikey and Joey in the tub. I've got the cell phone in my sweatshirt pocket. I lean over to wash Joey's hair. Phone falls in the water. I pull it out. I'm like, oh my God. Oh my God. Now, most people will say, well, most of these phones are protected right now. Nowadays, the water doesn't affect it, I guess. But when the guts of your phone when it's hanging out, you're in trouble.
You didn't have a back. Yeah.
So the thing's still working though, Chase. And I'm like, this is amazing. So I'm working from my bed. I'm like texting with sources and stuff and people in the league. And all of a sudden my phone just turns bright white, like just like a light, almost like your flashlight. I'm like, oh God, this ain't good. This is not good. I'm like, all right, I'm going to wake up in the morning, just go get a new iPhone. It's not a big deal. Well, 3 stores later, I wind up at the Apple store, and I walk in there, and the guy is so nice to me, and he said, all right, let's get you a new phone. We got you going. He said, what's your iCloud password? I have no idea. I mean, think of anything in my life. I tried it. Then I get locked out. I call Apple. They can't give you a new password for 7 days. 7. 1 week. I can't work if I don't have my cell phone. Freaking out. Okay, you've known me long enough to know. Do I seem like a crier? Do I seem like somebody that breaks down and acts all emotional?
Cry. Yeah, I can see you cry.
What? I've cried like 3 times in my life.
Yeah, no, you're like a man. Never mind.
Tears. I heard that, by the way. Tears. I mean, freaking out. I call one of our producers, Jeremy. I'm like, I lost my phone. It's over. I'm never going to have a job. My career's over. Call everyone with another phone in the iPhone store. And an extra one I had. Long story. Okay, so this is where it gets crazy. I'm there for 4 hours, and I'm just walking around. I don't know what to do. I need somebody to fix this. This is Apple. Okay, these people can come up with I'm even thinking about people I knew in the league that knew someone at Apple. I'm like, who could help me? Oh, I just need to get to my password to get to my iCloud. So when I got a new phone, all my contacts would go over. Remember back in the day, by the way, when we had cell phones, they had the wire to connect your new phone.
Yeah, you just connect
with
them.
And they don't do that anymore.
Yeah, you don't need that. You don't need it.
Because you have the cloud, okay? So this really nice guy named Paul sees me and he's like, are you okay? I'm like, no, I'm not okay. My face is blotchy. I'm sweating. I'm crying. I smell like a garbage can because I'm stressed. And he's like, let me see your phone. And he'd already seen his colleagues trying to help me. I mean, they're probably like, no one wants to deal with me. So he's like, oh my gosh, your screen is horrendous. This is dangerous. Like, look at all the wires hanging out of it. He said, let's connect it to like a television screen, with an HDMI thing. I'm like, all right. Okay, so I'm behind the counter of the Apple store. He's on the other side of the counter. He connects it. Boom. The thing, my screen pops up. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's there. We got it. He's like, okay, where's your password? I'm like, it's in the notes section. He's like, your screen won't let me touch it. Like, I can't get to it because the screen's so busted. Like doesn't work. His manager walks behind him. He's like, what are you guys doing? He's like, I can't touch the screen. We're so close. Chase, the whole time I'm like, I'm praying to every saint that I could think of. St. Anthony, St. Michael, St. Joseph, St. Peter. I'm like, please. And so the general manager goes, just use the technology that blind people use. Okay, so if you triple click it, voice on, voice, it's
accessibility.
There's an incredible thing that Apple has. Well, they're able to somehow turn it on with my phone without a screen, and we get control over the phone again. And we go to my notes section, and voila, there's my password. I get a new phone, we upload the thing, all because I couldn't remember my passcode. And I'm not telling you my passcode because I just don't want anyone, in case that's a passcode of anything else I have. When I tell you it was the most basic thing you could think of, I can't believe I couldn't remember that. But my very long journey, my emotional journey of thinking my life was over, or at least my career. And by the way, you know what the sad thing too was? All my pictures of the boys when they were born, all my videos, that's what I thought I lost.
Yeah.
I know. I know what you're gonna do because you're gonna do what everyone in my life has done. You're gonna ask me a bunch of different questions.
Yeah.
Trust me, I thought of it. I kept hitting roadblocks in trying to solve this problem. Go. Ask me questions.
Well, I'm not even gonna ask you a question. I'm just gonna observations from the story. One, when you said that they put it up on the screen, I thought some stuff was gonna come up there that you didn't want people to see. I thought that was like going to happen to you.
Now, I will share that the person observed my contact list.
That's fine. I don't care about that. I was worried about like pictures that you don't want out there and stuff like that.
Oh, no. He's like, you know Saquon Barkley? Because Saquon's like in my contact list from when we did that interview with him. I was
That's
like,
funny.
He's like, there's only one Saquon Barkley on planet Earth. I'm like, yep, and it's that one.
The second thing is, why in the world, I'm not even worried about you forgetting your password. Like, tell me you're old without telling me you're not old, because like you thought that we still had to freaking connect phones with a cord. Like what? It is so simple. And I told you this, and you don't take advice from me because you must think I'm dumb. Order a phone. First of all, you wouldn't have to gone up there. Second of all, you could have just easily connected to your iCloud with the other. You just put these phones back to back and they connect. Okay. And the other observation.
Wait.
It's very simple.
You're telling me if I had just ordered the phone when you told me to and it came in.
Yes, you wouldn't have this issue.
You kiss your phones and they transfer the info?
It's very, very simple in about 22 minutes. And you could have saved.
Like you're living in a different world than me.
I
Nothing
told
in my
you
life
this,
works
though.
this way.
I told you this, and I told you how simple it was, but you're so hard-headed, you didn't want to do it. And second of all, when was the last time you got a freaking new phone? Because the fact that you don't even remember your iCloud password tells me you haven't had a new phone in a very long time.
That is true. I haven't. So I get very anxious and nervous with change. And I'm afraid of what
It's just a new phone. It takes 20 minutes. I have 55,000 pictures from 2011 on this device because that's how powerful this device is. It has gotten so much better. And I
Maybe
told you, and
change
you
my
didn't
lesson
answer.
learned. My lesson learned is not write down your iPhone and iCloud password. The lesson learned is when Chase tells you about something in terms of technology, listen to him.
It's so
because I think
easy.
it's fair to say that you are a little stronger in that category.
I would say so.
Chase, but okay, real talk. And I'm not like trying to be dramatic. It was one of the hardest days because of the idea, the fear of it. And then it's also scary how much you depend on your
Well, that's another thing
like
too.
that.
I bet you had like withdrawal syndrome because you're like, this is my livelihood. But don't you have like an iPad that you could have text with or like
Good question. Good
like
question.
a desktop?
They asked me the same thing. They were like, do you have other Apple equipment? I said, I don't. I'm not an Apple user. Because that was their way of trying to get into my iCloud. They're like, I bet you're logged in somewhere else. I'm like, I don't own anything Apple.
Were you with your kids or alone?
No, but it's a good question because I did call my dad from the Apple store and I just didn't have the energy to explain everything to him. I just said, you and mom have to come to the house to watch the boys tonight. Because I knew I was going to be such an emotional wreck if I lost all my contacts. And I was like, I can't take care of these two
There's
kids.
just no way. I really just don't think you know how iCloud works. Like, there's just no way you can lose your contacts if you back them up.
Crazy that Apple their security is so intense. And that was the worst part about this.
Do you have two-step verification?
Yeah. But everything leads back to your phone, right? So it's like, like I'm filling out the paperwork to get my Apple recovery. And they're like, what's the passcode on your phone? I'm like, I'm obviously on this because I can't get in my phone. Like, do you understand what I'm saying? Like everything's connected to the item you need. So I kept running into walls.
Yeah, I actually don't feel bad for you.
Well,
Listen to me. Should have listened to me.
Best thing that ever happened to me was that my husband was out of town. Do you know the lecture I would have gotten?
Yeah, I just gave you it. That's ridiculous.
He just got back. I'm avoiding him because I'm waiting for the, this is your livelihood. This is your oh God. So it's almost like when your parents, like when you get in trouble. I used to say to my mom, just hit me. Because I didn't want to hear her
I'm not even
lecture me.
I'm not even going to give a lesson learned. My lesson learned is don't give Dianna advice because she doesn't listen to it.
Come on, you've had issues this week. Things aren't perfect for you. What do you got? I need to learn, obviously. I'm growing.
Mine's more serious. I think I've learned through like when I started working the TV job to like speaking of phone, I mean literally that's hilarious. Speaking of phones, I have to set almost like a limit on my phone because I want to be in the know. Yeah, like I almost like want to be in the know too much that like I've learned that like when I get home from work, I got to put my phone away at least for a few hours to just focus on the time with the kids and the time with the family. And that goes a long way because it adds up. So put your phone away. Like it's really not that, like, let's be real. Like your job depends on it, but everyone else, it's really not that important. Like that tweet, that Instagram, that's just like, I think I've learned that working in like, especially just the time, there's like really very little margin of error for us and our family with time during the week, just because I have crazy hours like early in the morning and I need to go to bed early. So just put the phone away.
Chase, everyone's addicted. We're all addicted to the endorphins it gives us. And you're right. Like every person, I'm sure, feels this way where they're guilty of swiping in their driveway. Like, do you ever do that where you pull into your driveway and you're looking at your phone?
My
and
wife's
you're like,
the worst
I've been
at that.
sitting in my car. Oh, Kev will text me from the house. You've been sitting in the driveway for 40 minutes.
I don't get it. I'm like, get out of your car.
I know. I think I'm just comfortable and I'm sitting there, and also I know what I am walking into, which, feed me, change me, tell me, read to me. Yes.
That makes sense to me.
But I think that's good. So look, I think this whole segment can be cell phone related. For those that are still listening and went through that journey with me, I don't want that to ever happen to anyone. And I said that. I'm like, I don't wish this on my worst enemy. So write your password down somewhere.
I still don't feel bad for you.
Thanks. I know. Not very empathetic to me. You have no time for me. All right, guys. Thank you so much for checking out Scoop City, make sure you check us out on YouTube. Don't forget, you can watch us as well as listen to us. Thanks to Joe for joining us. Have a fantastic weekend. And also, don't forget to subscribe to the Scoop City newsletter. Monday through Friday, you can check that thing out. And it's basically everything you need to know about the league. I mean, we're busy. We talk about trying to stay off your phone. If you want to stay off your phone and just learn and know what's going on and what you need to know about the trends and all the big storylines, the Scoop City newsletter. Sign up. We will see you guys next time.
Bye, guys. Tag me next time.
Thanks for tuning into Scoop City. If you want to hear more, make sure you like and subscribe. We drop our new episodes every Tuesday and Friday.